that took us to this planet seemed like a very good spot to begin.
That's where we're supposed to begin.
It truly is the beginning for this.
For this. And can you tell me what this is?
A repetition, a cyclical creation of environment for growth and expansion.
I see.
Yes. This is over and over and over and over and over again. We do this.
Just keeps going over and over and over again.
This is the most recent beginning.
So, when did it start? Was there ever a starting date?
In this beginning, or is this the infinite beginning?
The infinite beginning.
It is an infinite beginning.
So there was never a start date?
It has always existed simultaneously with the time that runs concurrently through us at the moment. Everything is happening simultaneously, even though it feels as if there is a never-ending gap.
Oh, okay. So there's no beginning because it's happening now.
Like a Russian doll within itself, and then within itself it creates more, and then within itself it creates more.
Okay.
We are just deep within at this point.
So how is the Earth created exactly?
There was a massive explosion that was provoked. A series of, seems like something similar to atoms splitting happened.
Was this on purpose?
Yes.
And who made this happen?
This is part of the original group.
Oh, okay.
They are those who dictate when and where we will begin a new dimensional universe.
Okay. So atoms were splitting?
There was just a very big explosion that catapults everything into a centrifugal motion, and it allows it to attract like to like and to create things. And it is still the same underlying magnetism that we use in our daily lives that created like to create our galaxy.
Oh, okay. So is the magnetism?
There is always an element of magnetism in every dimension, in every universe, in every creation. It is what we use to pull like to like, to create. That is why you find dirt in clumps together and not specks littered all around. What brings a tree together? What brings a school of fish together? Like to like.
Like to like, okay. And then so after the Earth was formed, what happened next?
It was a very long period of formation and cooling. And
Why
then
was it hot?
when there's that much motion, there's always heat that lets forth from creation and motion, a friction that creates heat. There was a vast cooling period here. And then the beginnings, a sprinkling of cells, seeds, if you will, spread out to create. Some grew, some did not.
Mm-hmm.
And then the manipulation began. And we are where we are.
Mm-hmm. And what about the dinosaurs? What was the purpose of that?
They are a terrific source of fuel for the technology that we have become dependent on.
Mm-hmm.
And
Was that their purpose?
was the main purpose.
Mm-hmm.
They were no longer needed and were de-evolved.
They were de-evolved?
De-evolved. They were brought down.
Mm-hmm.
It was not the right conditions for our species to prosper.
Mm-hmm.
It was too dangerous.
It was too dangerous.
We needed things to eat, but they were not the easiest to catch.
They weren't. What do you mean, the easiest to catch?
To hunt. And there were jumps in their evolutionary process that we could not explain and did not trust. And with that, it was found wisest to postpone development slightly and to eradicate this this danger, this hindrance.
How did you get rid of them?
There were several tactics that were used. One was a giant explosion that we used in order to basically alter their eating habits and pretty much stress them out, those who survived. There was a great fear of fire as well, which this also added to it and caused them to kind of mass panic. Disease. Massive amounts of disease were shipped in.
It was shipped in?
That was specific to their breeds.
What type of disease?
Different things that you would look at as possibly a virus now.
Okay.
But these are not things that would affect a human. So we were very careful about what we brought in because we did not want it to become uncontained, as we had already realized we had brought things in that we did not want. And we were very careful about this extermination. Others we saw as valuable, and we liked, in many ways, the taste of them. So we slowly de-evolved them into different animals that were harmless in many ways.
So you de-evolve them into animals that you like the taste of?
Yes. Chickens were once very vicious dinosaurs. They tasted very good.
So how did you create them, make them smaller?
By taking away their resources and their fresh air, it makes them smaller and weaker. It makes them less aggressive. And it's something you do slowly over time. It's not something you rush in and you do and switch out and sting with a laser beam and it suddenly changes. It's something that has to be done very naturally with this instigation, or it doesn't survive, it doesn't make it. We've learned that in the past. It's a very big mistake. Things must be given time.
So if it's not given time, then it doesn't work?
Every time. If you rush it and you push it and you try to make magic with it, it doesn't come out the way you want it to.
In human time, how long would that take about?
Probably a good 100,000 years.
100,000 years. And you were saying that these animals are placed for food? Is that why they were created?
There were many that were created for food. Some were created for spectatorship, entertainment.
Which animals?
The larger ones, the ones that were these great beasts.
Mm-hmm.
We realized that certain things that they ate made them taste different.
Really?
And this was not a world where cows existed or pigs existed. This was not a place where we were looking for a quick, small domestication of certain small animals. We were looking for larger things that we could easily hunt and could feed many.
What was one of the first?
It looks like something similar to what a woolly mammoth would have evolved into.
Okay.
I see large tusks, and I see it being a 20-story building compared to 5-6 foot people.
So the purpose of these animals were to be food? And then what about the primitive people? Were they taught to eat these things? Or did they just know?
They understood, as they had evolved themselves, that certain things were very edible and certain things were likely to kill you. So they understood from the foliage and the greenery around them what they could eat from there. But after sometimes a lightning strike would cause a massive fire and these animals would get caught into them, they would explore these areas after the fire would leave and find these cooked animals, and they began to experiment, because if it was not too long after, the smell was pleasing, and they began to realize that they felt differently when they would ingest the body of these animals, and they became very powerful, as in more protein, stamina, focus, brain growth. They began to evolve because of that. I think this is all a very long time, though, a very long process.
A very long
Very
process.
long. I feel like a very long and drawn-out process. But it had to be done correctly.
So it took a very long time.
And that is the short of it.
That's the short of it. And then, so after animals were introduced to humans, what else was introduced to them?
The use of certain specific things within nature as medicine.
Like what? Could you tell me about that?
They began to notice that with the differences of what they were eating, changing the way their bodies were reacting to things, that different flowers, for instance, would make them feel differently, that different roots would make them feel differently, and some of them could kill you altogether. And there began a noted mental record of what did what. And
A mental record?
because they did not have any form of writing or even a concept of what that would have been. But there was an amazing memory for these people. It must have been a very big part of the brain that I think we have closed down a bit.
And this memory, was it passed on?
Yes.
Through communication or just
through
the subconscious?
Through the subconscious and through birth. My child could recall at a certain age many of the things I already knew, for instance. And you could pass it on. I feel that the strongest link was from mother to daughter.
Okay.
In the XX chromosome. You could find a direct link to this knowledge, and you, from there, began power. I want to say commanding. There became a person that was more important than the others in the group because of their knowledge.
Because they had more knowledge? They have more of this particular type of memory?
No, yes, that this was a particular knowledge that was invaluable, that could save others' lives. And while brute force and strength had once been the commanding factor of who would lead groups of people, this began to change as well.
So it began to evolve so that the people with more memory would start to be the leaders instead of the force.
The memory and the knowledge of those, and you begin to see, it looks like a matriarch culture emerges first in the first true civilizations.
A matriarch culture.
Because of this ability to pass the information that could save lives and benefit others around you. And it was not a sheer domination over you that guided you, but the promise of health that did.
The promise of health.
And people grew healthier and lived longer and had safer pregnancies and childbirths because of this knowledge. And it became highly respected and coveted.
Very good. So what type of plants were used for health benefits?
There was a beautiful white flower that grew amongst reeds in water, and this was collected in the spring, and it was dried out and ground up and used as a tea, and this was something that you could use in order to bring down pain severely for people. The pain was a big factor, whether it be a toothache or childbirth. The controlling of pain was the first thing that we looked for.
Did it work?
Yes. And the barks of trees then were found to be filled with things that could be distilled into a tea. Roots could be mashed up. And then with this, the idea of what hallucinogenics will do to people. And
what would they do?
The certain things would produce hallucinogenic effects.
Was this beneficial?
And it was, and it wasn't at the same time. It was good to know what these things were so they could be avoided if they were not desired, because many misunderstandings would occur from taking them without realizing what they were. And from understanding what they were, many would use them for enlightenment purposes and for distractions. What you would eventually create as religion would be spurred from this.
So if they took the hallucinogenics, they would create sort of like a religion type of
They would see things they couldn't
Yeah.
understand, and they would place it as something higher than them,
Okay.
something governing them, something above them. And
Were these in fact just I can't speak.
yes.
Yes. Hallucinations.
Yes.
Okay. So, what about the people's emotional bodies? Did they have strong emotions?
They were very primitive emotions.
Mhm.
There were very few emotions at that time.
Mhm.
There was jealousy,
Mhm.
rage, sadness, and grief. Happiness was kind of different.
Tell me what you mean.
Happiness was more of a appreciation and less a joy for a long time. Just a general satisfaction.
Mhm.
And from better conditions and better knowledge, we then grew our emotions, and we were able to add on things like joy
Mhm.
and
So with
just-
better conditions came stronger emotions?
yes.
With
When
the-
conditions exist in one way for a very long time, the emotions will mimic the conditions.
Mhm. For the primitive people, did they create illnesses in their bodies?
The biggest threat was the elements
Oh.
and the animals around them.
Mhm.
They were not as keen to become ill with disease
They weren't?
at first, no.
Mhm.
It was something they saw after,
Mhm.
and it suddenly became apparent to them that they too could fall sick like this,
Mhm.
and from the example became susceptible.
Oh, okay. From watching other people?
From those of us who came from other places come here
Mhm.
and fall ill for many different reasons.
How does Jen's body look? Because I know she's been under for a little while. Is she doing okay?
It's doing okay.
Okay. Can we continue for a little bit longer?
Yes.
What type of roots or flowers or plants would the people eat if they had an illness?
There was very little eating if there was an illness.
Mhm.
A majority of the medicines were made into teas or
Mhm.
tinctures and were drank by the people.
Mhm.
If there were other instances where they could not keep the waters down, they would make poultices,
Mhm.
and apply them to the skin and then put leaves on top of them
Mhm.
in order for these to be as like an osmosis absorbed into the skin to become part of the person.
Mhm. Were these effective means to
If-
treat?
There was enough belief that it would work
Mhm.
on both ends.
Mhm.
It was very effective.
So it was about the belief.
But if someone wanted to die, they were going to die.
Okay.
It didn't matter.
Very good.
Wanting to continue is a very big part of the development of the species.
So a desire to continue, you mean?
Free will.
Free will.
There is no medicine to save you if you do not want to live.
Right.